What's driving that optimism? Valuations looking cheap still.
Yes, good morning. Thanks for having me on here. Yes, look, I think the market's really been driven mostly by liquidity, but also with a strong fundamental backdrop, namely very strong corporate earnings growth and valuations which we think still look very reasonable relative to regional peers.
When you take a look at the rally, it's been driven pretty much by retail investors, pretty much the same story for a lot of the markets this year. Will they continue to lift Vietnam stocks, considering that foreign investors have been making an exit for, what, about 8 weeks now?
Indeed. I mean, we actually saw close to $600 million of net foreign selling in May. So, foreigners have been taking profit in selected names given the strong move in the market. Although we don't think the selling is necessarily reflective of broader foreign investor sentiment, which we think remains very positively disposed towards Vietnam given the strong long-term structural growth story. But yes, I mean, the market has been driven very much by retail. And we think the key is domestic liquidity and the fact that bank deposit rates are at, and Vietnamese government bond yields are at record lows. So, people are essentially being forced to invest into the equity market to some extent to generate returns. And we've seen the same phenomenon in many other markets and jurisdictions, and I guess that's the intent of policymakers. I guess is to encourage investment in risk assets.
And it's just fascinating, right? You see these millennials, retail investors, they're setting up trading accounts at remarkable speeds, and then you have them using some of these trading smartphone apps to buy stocks as well. Stephen, do you see this as a potential turning point in the market?
I certainly hope so. It's been a fantastic market it's been a fantastic backdrop for brokers. I was saying to some investor, I do the investor relations for HSC. We are a publicly listed company. Our ticker is HCM. I was telling investors on our last earnings call that I hadn't seen a better outlook for a broking business since I was at Goldman in the first quarter of 2007. This really is a fantastic market environment for brokers, and we're seeing something like 100,000 new retail accounts being added every month. That's what we've been seeing essentially since the advent of the lockdown here, the first lockdown here that happened back in March. That was really the catalyst for this explosion in retail trading activity.
And you mentioned about the foreign investors, the net outflows we've seen for 8 straight months. That's the longest streak we've seen on record. What's keeping them away at the moment? And what do you see as the catalyst for overseas investors to return?
Yeah. Again, I think the selling that we've seen is a little bit misleading. It's actually very concentrated in a number of names. Specifically Vinamilk, big consumer products company. That's seeing a lot of foreign selling. And I think in that case, because of the company's slowing top-line growth, a couple of big holders have essentially capitulated, and that accounts for a lot of the selling in that. Hoa Phat, which has been a phenomenal performer this over the last 12 months, up over 100%. Probably the world's best performing steel stock, certainly one of the world's most profitable steel companies. That we've seen a lot of profit taking in that name over the last, and that's picked up noticeably over the last few weeks as the stock price continues to go up. But again, retail has come in, and retail is absorbing that foreign selling. And the other name where we've seen a lot of selling is Viet Tin Bank, which is one of the state banks, and there was a sell down there by a strategic shareholder, and that's been ongoing over the last 12 months, and that also accounts for a lot of the selling. But broadly speaking, I think foreign investors are very favorably disposed towards Vietnam, and we've seen a lot of buying, particularly in financials and banks.
Stephen, I just want to jump in here. I mean, there's a huge consumption story here, right? Because we know that about 30% of the population will be in the middle class by 2025. How do you position for that?
I think you're quite right, and again, incomes are rising, and there's a very high level of household formation, strong demand for everything from building products to consumer appliances to tourism and travel related services. So there's a virtuous circle here of consumption and investment in Vietnam, and in addition to that, we have a very strong FDI story, a very strong supply chain relocation story, and the result of that, a very strong export growth story. So I think the Vietnamese economy is really like firing on all cylinders, and the only thing it really lacks is capital. Vietnam, big population, 100 million people, one of the biggest agricultural producers in the region, if not the world. It's got land, it's got labor, but it doesn't have enough capital, and that's where foreign investors come in.